Okay, I guess we can start. We have 5 minutes gone after 7. Hopefully, a few more will join. Yeah, good evening, everyone, and good afternoon to you, our speaker joining from Sweden. This is the second seminar organized by the BRU for 2023. Just a very quick introduction, what we are trying to do here. We want our bachelor's and master's students to understand the importance of publishing your research work. That is the very purpose of holding this webinars, like series. And this definitely has a connection to ICBR 2023, which is the International Conference on Business Research, which is falling in end of this year on the 4th of December. So there is a connection of this webinar series with the ICBR 2023, that particular conference. Basically, we want you two students, PG and bachelor's students, submitting your research work to that particular conference. So this is just a kind of a motivation, some catalyst for you to understand the importance of parliamentary research work. That is why we let you hear from some experienced researchers who have been successful with their research publications. Okay, with that, without further delay, I invite Ms. Rajika to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. Rajika, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. Let me introduce today's speaker, Dr. Praneeth Chandran, to the audience. Dr. Praneeth obtained his bachelor's degree in engineering from Vellore Institute of Technology in 2014. Soon after the completion of bachelor's degree, he joined to the University of Illinois and completed his master's degree in mechanical engineering. Thereafter, he worked as a junior design engineer, international project coordinator in several industries. Thereafter, in 2022, he pursued his PhD in operation and management engineering from Luleå University in Sweden. Also, currently, he is working as a postdoctoral researcher in the same university. And his research interests are optimization, machine learning, AI, modeling and simulation, and similar subject areas. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce you to this audience, Dr. Praneeth. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Praneeth.
So thank you, Prasanna and Rajika. So first and foremost, I would like to thank the Business Research Unit at University of Moratuva for inviting me. And it's a great pleasure to meet you all. And to rest of everyone, I hope you're having a good evening. I think this time is 7 o'clock in Sri Lanka right now. So as Rajika informed, maybe I can introduce a bit more about myself. So as she said, my name is Praneeth Chandran, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Division of Operation and Maintenance Engineering in Luleå University of Technology at Sweden. So basically, I'm from India, the southern part of India. If you have heard, it's called Kerala. And I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from India. And then I did my master's in mechanical engineering from University of Illinois at Chicago. And then completed my PhD in Sweden. So today's talk, I'm going to talk about academic publishing in general. And the title of my talk is Paving a Path to Success, like why and how students should publish their work. So I want this session to be more of an interactive session. So please feel free to interrupt me, ask questions, or open a discussion anytime during when I'm talking. So I've structured today's talk in the following way. So first I'll start with why we should publish our work. So what are the benefits of publishing for a student to develop their professional career? In this talk, I'll be talking more of my personal experience and how publication has helped me as an individual. And then the second topic will be how can you move from research to publications? So some steps for academic publishing and few personal tips to make this procedure much more easier. And the third talk will be to overcome some barriers, like some of the common challenges that students face when it comes to academic publishing. And then the fourth point will be like the power of feedback. So how can feedbacks during this academic publishing procedures be useful for a student. And finally, I'll be talking about how to make an impact with your publications. So how to use your published work to build your reputation and advance your career further. So moving on, when the first topic is why to publish, what is the importance of publishing? So I would like to share my personal experience. When I started my bachelor's, when I heard academic publishing, it was just a jumbled pop-up words that kept coming to my head. It was like journals, English, writing, abstract, introduction, drafting, peer review, publishings. And see, all these words were confusing for me at the start. And actually, I was a demotivated student not to publish. So never in my mind, I had thought of publishing when I started my bachelor's. But then I want to share an experience I had as to why I'm talking to you regarding the importance of academic publishing. So in my bachelor's, when I was doing my engineering degree in mechanical engineering, during my second year, there is something called as summer jobs, if you have heard of, like where we get some pocket money to use it for a personal expense. And during my second year, I was looking for a summer job, and fortunately, I ended up working as a lab assistant at my university. And one of the criteria to land the job was the faculty had asked me that whatever outcome I get from the summer job had to be converted into a research publication. So the motivation for me was just the pocket money for the summer job. And I said yes, as usually Indians have a habit of saying yes to everything. And then I said yes, and I started with the summer job. So the faculty had a project under which a PhD student was working. And I was working for the PhD student to collect some data from the lab, analyze these data, put in some results, and hand over the results to this PhD student. So which in future, the PhD student will elaborate further and use for his thesis work. And the summer job started. I started working in the lab, collected some data, measured them, analyzed them, produced some results. And based on the faculty's demand, like I started writing on the academic publication or the paper. And fortunately, we submitted to a conference, and the paper got accepted, and the paper was be able to be presented at that conference. And the conference was held in Malaysia. So what in my head I was thinking was like, nice, this is a good way to visit places. I can visit different countries if I have some publication. So that was my initial motivation. And based on this motivation, I had a bucket list of places where I had to visit. The next was Australia. And so from the results I obtained from this summer job, I tried to draft another paper, modified it a bit, and then had my second paper sent to a conference in Australia. So by the end of second year, luckily, I was able to visit Malaysia, present the paper, meet a lot of scholars and researchers who worked in that particular field, understand the field a bit more. And unfortunately, my second paper was accepted, but I couldn't visit Australia. So what started off as like, a bucket list, fulfillment of bucket list to visit places. So academic publication was my, go-to step at that time. I didn't know the importance until later, how published papers helped me during various later stages of my career. So, but then, as I said, like it started, and then I had 2 publications by end of my second year based on a project, which was not even part of my own work. It was just for a PhD project. And I decided like, yeah, this was a good step. Once you talk to a lot of people, you understand a lot of new happenings in your particular field. And then I completed my third paper during this time. Fortunately, in the conference that I went to Malaysia, I met a few professors who were working in this field. And one of them was from MIT, USA. I hope you have heard of the university. And luckily, he was impressed with the work I did. And especially that I was a bachelor student who was just pursuing my second year of bachelor's. So he developed a keen liking, and then he offered me a an internship program in USA for 6 months. But unfortunately, I couldn't join that particular institute because of my visa issues. But that was an opening that I got very early in my bachelor's, just because I published papers. And that's what I wanted to talk to you today about. What are the benefits of publishing? So of course, publishing a paper will help you build a professional profile. It helps you in your career development. Usually a publication shows your productivity, your activity, and your ability to contribute to a knowledge in particular field. So this in your resume is a strong point, especially if you want to go to an industry as well. You already demonstrate your expertise and authority. So it's like a proof of document that you are already having some experience in that particular field. Even for industrial persons, these are really important things. So it's like a proof of experience that you have prior knowledge on that particular topic. And then the next point is you always contribute to the field. Maybe in your undergraduate level, the contribution is minimal, but it is still a contribution. When you're writing a paper, you're trying to fill in a research gap that has been already previously established. And further, when you publish a paper, it increases the visibility of yourself. You promote yourself to a wider audience, showing that, okay, you have some expertise in this particular field. You have carried out some task in this field. And further, when you publish a paper, you learn and develop some certain skills that are crucial in this modern world. So you develop the ability of critical thinking. You enhance your language and writing skills. You enhance your communication skills as well when you publish a paper. And of course, in industries or in academia, you always have feedbacks to whatever work you do. And publishing also helps in that step to some sort of extent. Especially publishing deals with peer review processing. So some experts are always looking at your work and giving you some inputs or like some remarks on what you do. And how you deal with this feedbacks helps you in your future life as well. And moreover, as I said, the most important thing for me when I published a paper was networks and collaborations that I developed. For example, that professor at MIT, I was able to just meet him when I went for this conference due to this academic publication. And in the end, of course, you always get some recognition when you publish an article. So there is a recognition that you have an expertise in your particular field when you show what work you have done through a publication. So these are some points which I wanted to share with you regarding the importance of publication. And if you have any comments or any questions you want to ask regarding these. Okay, so maybe then I move forward. So my next topic is how can you move from your research and from your research, how can you go forward to publication? So there are a few steps which I personally follow myself. First, of course, is preparing the manuscript. The manuscript usually has like a title, an abstract, introduction, methodology, results and discussion, and conclusion. So I don't know how many of you have published an article before, or is there anyone who has published an article before here? Okay, I don't see. Yeah, so usually, let's say, like in manuscript, if you want to put in simple words, let's think manuscript as a movie, we can say. The title is the movie itself. So abstract in general is extended trailer of the movie. So it has all the information that is required, but in a shorter time frame or like in a short version. So introduction to your manuscript is something like you start with the background of the story, the background of the hero, what is the hero currently doing, and the introduction ends with the problem the hero is going to face. So similarly, in an academic journal also, it is the same way. Introduction is what is the previous work that has been carried out, what is the problem you're looking into, what is the field you want to express yourself into, and then you come to the research gap, or what is the current problem that you're trying to solve. And methodology is the steps that you use to solve these problems. And from the methodology, what is the observation comes in the results and discussion. And finally, what you conclude from these observations comes under conclusion. And a personal tip when you're writing a publication is, I always start writing the methodology, the results and discussion and conclusions first, because these are the things that we do ourselves, the work. So it's much easier to write these down. And from there, I take the introduction chapter, which personally I take a lot of time to write, because that's where you deal with literature reviews and introducing the concept and the topics. And from once you have your introduction, methodology, results and discussion, and your conclusion, it's easier to write the abstract. And of course, finally, the title, which suits all of these things you have written, and which also suits the journal you're trying to send to. So the next step is always choosing the right journal. So when you choose the right journal, you have to be careful that the journal is within the scope of what you're actually writing in the paper. And there are other factors which you can consider when you select a journal, is impact factor and keywords. So these things will help you to choose the right journal in which you want to publish your article. And of course, the final step is formatting your manuscript according to the journal template. So most of the journals these days have their own templates, and it is ready to use available, like it is in the Word format or LaTeX format. And so it is much easier these days to convert your manuscript into the journal template. But when you move from research to publication, or you're trying to publish for the first times, I always try to tell my students that there are 4 key points that I always keep in mind. So when you write a manuscript, it is always ideal to have a compelling introduction. So introduce the topic very well, what you're doing. Establish a strong literature review you have conducted. So that means the past work that has been carried out here. And always, from these literature reviews, establish a strong research gap, or a gap that you're trying to solve within what you're going to do in this paper. And from there, the next point is how you present your results and how do you analyze them. So always try to present your results using some pictorial descriptions, or some data analysis if you have, or some graphical representations, because that makes the viewers or the reviewers easy to understand what is happening with your study. And then the next thing is, how do you navigate your peer review? So usually you get some comments, or it can be critical comments, or it can be positive feedbacks from experts within this field. So you have to navigate this review process with care. You have to answer each and every questions put forward by these reviewers. And once you do these, it's much more easier to get a paper accepted in a journal. And of course, when you write a paper, you have to have some ethical considerations. You should try to avoid plagiarism or copy materials from other sources. You should have a proper authorship, how you, the subtask that has been carried out in your paper, or different authors. Of course, that's what I meant here. And of course, there should be no conflict of interest with other researchers, as far as you know. And moving on to this next part, which is like overcoming barriers. Most of the students I have seen face some challenges, usually when it comes to academic publishing, or when they're trying to write their first paper. So the first one is the lack of confidence. I see a lot of bachelor's or master's students who complete their project within our university, but they don't have the confidence or trust that their work is good enough to be published in an article, which is not entirely true, because when you do a project and you're under supervision, we always believe that there is some knowledge that you're imparting to your current field. So talk to your peers always, talk to your faculties, talk to your supervisors, and ask them, do you think that, okay, this is publishable material? And once you talk to your colleagues or your faculties, they will always encourage you to go ahead and publish your work. So that's how you can overcome this lack of confidence. And then there's usually the language or writing skills issue that most of the students face. So this is easily solvable nowadays. There are various applications that you can use online. You can use your colleagues or your faculties to review your papers and correct your language mistakes. And as I said, there are ready-made available websites which can be helpful in correcting your language as a whole. The most important I've seen when students write for the first time is what we call as the writer's block. So writer's block is something that, you start writing about a particular topic, but then after a few sentences, you don't have enough words to express yourself. You're stuck in a loop. So what you do here is, again, you start talking to your team, you start talking to your faculties, your fellow students, and discuss with them like, okay, this is what I'm trying to write, but I'm not able to put it in words. Can you help me out? And of course, a faculty or a co-author for your paper will always be there to help you there. And usually writer's block can be also removed if you try to read more papers, because then you see how other authors have worked around this, like how they have written a particular sentences in a creative way. So reading and communicating with others will always help you to remove your writer's block. And the most important part for a student is time management, the most crucial challenges. So you have your own personal life. Maybe some of you are working, and then some of you are also studying, taking courses at the same time. So how do you manage time to add an additional work, that is to write a paper? What I recommend is, at least when I was a student, is I used to put like a certain time of the day, like 10 to 15 or 20 minutes per day that I spend on writing an article. So start slowly, and then you can manage this. So you will have to specify a certain amount of time per day to write a paper. And finally, finding suitable journals is another issue that students usually face. But again, nowadays it's very easy. Everything is available on website. Also, you have ChatGPT. I hope you have heard about it right now. So you just have to put in, like, I have a paper in this field, and this is the scope of this paper. Can you suggest some new journals or some popular journals? So you usually get a list of journals, and then navigating this problem is pretty easy nowadays. And finally, the last and major challenge the students have is the fear of rejection. So some students do not go forward and publish their research because they are afraid to get rejected. But as a student, you have to take rejection in a positive way. That's what I feel. Because in academic publishing, when you get rejected, you always get some feedback from the reviewers. So use this feedbacks to enhance your paper further. With this comments, you may get a better idea onto how to restructure your paper, or maybe a suggestion to change some methods in your paper, or some suggestions to present your results much more in a better way. So you can use this feedback and not be afraid of rejection, but in the end, use these feedbacks to enhance your paper much more further. And you must have heard when I said there are a lot of rejections. There is people, experts in your field, usually review your papers. So how to use these review process to your benefit? That's what I want to talk about in the power of feedback. So when you submit an academic paper, you usually are reviewed by 2 or 3 or maybe up to 5 experts in your field. And they usually give you some comments back. And based on these comments back, you can enhance the quality and rigor of your work further. You get some constructive criticism, and from these criticism, you can find areas of improvement in your papers, and that will enhance the quality of the research you're carrying out, and ensure what you're carrying out is correct. So use these to enhance the quality and rigor. And of course, it strengthens clarity and communications. So when you receive a feedback from a reviewer, you as a student have an obligation to reply back to the reviewer. So sometimes the reviewers may misunderstand what you're trying to convey through your paper. So then you have an opportunity to explain to him what are you trying to solve in this paper, and what do you think is right, and what do you think needs improvement. So based on these, you develop an ability to provide a positive debate, a positive communication, and enhance the clarity in your responses. So this quality is actually well looked upon in industries as well as in academia. A person who is able to communicate and clearly conveys ideas are much preferred in these modern times right now. So of course, you can nurture your professional growth based on these feedbacks. So sometimes the reviewers give you really important points that you might have missed when you did your research. So you might not have thought about it in that way of the work you're trying to do. So of course, these will help you, gain much more insight into the current technologies or the methodologies which the reviewer has suggested to you. And that can be used in your professional career as well. And in the end, again, you develop some collaborations and networking with your reviewers. Some reviewers, based on your work, try to contact you regarding your work, and they try to establish a collaboration where you can further take it up to the next level. So this may be in the form of industries or academic collaborations. So anything can happen when you get some positive feedbacks. Of course, you advance your own knowledge, and you get some sparking new ideas based on these comments you receive. So sometimes a reviewer's comment will open up a window which you might not have seen when you are carrying out your work. And when you have this review process, as I mentioned before, you develop a constructive and professional attitude, which will eventually help you whenever you move to your career life. It can be both academia as well as industry. So finally, I would like to say how to use your published work to build your reputation and advance your career. So in case you are publishing your work, try to engage in knowledge dissemination. That means try to participate in conferences, apply for scholarships, fellowships based on your research. When you go for a conference, you meet a lot of people, industrial experts or academic experts in your particular area, and try to interact with them. It's an opening where you can get to interact with these people and establish yourself that, okay, you have some experience in this particular area. This will eventually prove a positive impact in your later careers, as it did for me. And from these conferences or technical workshops, you always have an opportunity to collaborate and network. In these modern times, if you want to work in an industry, this collaboration and networking is one of the crucial factors. This collaboration and networking will, give you stepwise future developments, or like if you want to promote yourself in your career, collaboration and networking is much more important. It's the same thing in academia. If you want to apply for a research funding or take your research further, you always need some collaboration with industries, with other academic partners. And publications and dissemination of your research is one way to establish this collaboration and network. Always try to seek recognition and awards for what you have done. I think that's what I said. You need to apply for scholarships, fellowships based on your research and your published papers, which eventually will give you some reputations or recognition in your particular field. And of course, when you publish an article, always use the online presence and social media. Put it out to the world that you have an academic published paper in such and such a field. It can be in the form of Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn, ResearchGate, and try to be active in these social media presence, because these are few medias that current employers look into when they're trying to hire you for an industry or in an academia. So I hope you had some information regarding academic publishing, and you're always open to contact me anytime using my email address. And since no one had any comments or any points during my talk, maybe we can have a discussion right now.
Yeah, hello, Dr. Chandran. So many thanks and a big thank for your detailed talk and the presentation. So I guess we can move to a Q&A session now. So students, do you have any question to ask from Dr. Chandran? You are very welcome to ask any questions from your side. Okay, so maybe while they are preparing, so let me ask a couple of questions from our side. So can you briefly explain how does publishing contributes to career advancement and the professional growth?
Sorry, can you repeat the question once more? I lost your last part.
Okay, how does publishing one's work contribute to career advancement and professional growth?
Okay, so are you talking about in academia or in industry?
Yeah, academia or industry, both.
Okay, so in academia, when you publish an article, it demonstrates your productivity, your scholarly activities, and your ability to contribute knowledge in that particular field. So it can lead to, getting more grants if you want to apply for fundings, and eventually it is a criteria for promotion in most of the institutes. And you also have an opportunity to speak at conferences, which will again enhance your knowledge level. So that's how it works in academia. For an industry, like especially when I was moved from academia after my master's, I worked sometime in an industry. So when we go for an interview to a particular field, so it becomes much more easier to explain it to them, like that you have certain expertise in this particular field. So it's like having a proof of document that, you have worked prior to this in this particular field.
Yeah.
Because sometimes undergraduate or most of the master students, when they want to step into an industry at the first time, it's usually the industry people ask for experience.
Yes, got it.
And most of us do not have experience when we want to step into an industry for the first time.
Yes.
And a publication is a proof that you have worked and you have some expertise in that field.
Dr. Chandran, so we have a question from our audience, Mr. Kavindu. So how to identify a high quality international journal?
So there are, of course, there is something called as impact factor, which anyone of us can check. Usually a higher impact factor represents a journal where most of the articles have been reused or recited most of the time. So a higher impact factor will indicate some sort of high quality journals. But then there are also other standards or other websites, like for example, Scopus, Web of Sciences, in which you can just put in the journal name you're trying to find out, and they have a quality level which will automatically give what is the quality of the journal you're intending to publish your paper.
Oh, sorry. I'm unmute. Sorry. So how probably with that question, so how can you briefly explain how can early career researchers overcome the challenges of publishing and build a strong publication record, Dr. Chandran?
So there is many,
Because
of course,
today our audience are from, I think most of them are from doing undergraduate. So
yeah, so I'll take my personal experience, meaning so I published my first paper when I was an undergraduate, second year. So prior to that, I had no knowledge of how to publish, or like I never thought of publishing anything when I was doing my undergraduate. But as I said, like, just go for it. Start writing, meaning, of course, you don't publish the next day after you write your paper. You always have your group of people whom you refer this paper to for advice and for corrections. So then faculties who have prior experiences in publishing papers will always guide you, find out some mistakes that you have made out, and do these corrections, and then you can make these changes and submit it. And as again said, maybe you get rejected the first time you send it,
of course,
but use the feedbacks from these reviewers, update it further, and then send it out again. So eventually your work, which started from a level, let's say 5, will move up to level 8, 9.
Don't stop after get the rejection. So try, right? Yes.
Yeah, because there's no shame, like to say, when I was doing after my doctoral studies, there are instances where I get rejected when I submit a paper.
Rejection
so that's
is a common thing when publishing.
Yes,
right? Yes,
of course, rejection is a common thing in publishing, but it's how you utilize this rejection
take the feedback in a constructive way, and then enhance the publications. Yes, sir. Dr. Prasanna? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Asanka. I'm sure we will hear a few more questions from the students, but anyway, until they come forward, Praneeth, if you can elaborate a little bit now, say, now, for example, this conference that we are holding end of this year, we also encourage students to present their ongoing research work. Probably they don't have the conclusions yet. So can you give a little bit of advices, like some tips if someone wants to present ongoing research work?
Yes, so of course, I don't know what is the format of your conference or how. So it's usually I recommend to my master students or my undergraduate students here that even if it's an ongoing research work, so go to a conference and present it, because in conferences there are a lot of people who are expert in your field or who have prior experiences in your field. So even if it's an ongoing research, some of the points in discussion will actually help you in completing these projects, because they might give you some insights, like how you can solve a particular problem, or like what is the next step that you can try to finish your research, to finish your current project. So this is like, use this opportunity as an interactive session that will aid in completing your project. So I hope, Prasanna,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Praneeth. Yeah, that answers my question.
So Dr. Chandran, so now when we get the the feedback from the peers. So can you briefly explain how as a researchers, how we can respond to this reviewers' feedback very effectively? That's also part of this publishing process, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so sure. So one thing we have to keep in mind is that, there are always two sides of a coin. Not every reviewers may be a positive person.
Yes,
like
of course,
there will be some persons who are, rough in their reply.
Tough kind of. Yes.
Yeah, so they can be tough, and they might be not rude, but they will be very critical in how they respond to your paper.
Maybe because they are very kind of what do you call it? Very kind of famous in their own area. So
yeah. So it depends. Not everyone who's famous might be like that also, but it depends. So there is a probability that you might get some tougher comments as well. But how do you tackle is accept the fact that, okay, reviewers are also human beings. Sometimes they can make mistakes. Sometimes they might not understand what you're trying to convince or what you're trying to say in a paper. So if you feel that, okay, there is some misunderstanding between what you are trying to communicate and what the reviewer have understood, try to explain it in a very nice professional way, without being rude in any sort. Try to appeal to the reviewer that you think that this is what we're trying to do, but maybe the reviewer has misunderstood this particular part, and try to add in some corrections so that it will elaborate further what you're trying to say. But of course, other reviewers are very kind in their review. They always give you comments as suggestions, but always see to the fact that you reply to each and every comment, whether it is given in a tough way or in a normal way. So try to make some corrections if you feel it is necessary, if you think that is the right thing to do, and always reply to the reviewer.
Okay. So
Radhika, sorry, can I ask? Sorry, Asanka.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is very relevant when we want to encourage students submitting for our conference that is to be held end of this year. Now, Praneeth, when we write articles for journals, you very correctly said, you complete the article and finally only we move to the abstract. Usually that is what we do as researchers when we submit for journals. Now, say, Praneeth, if we want to submit for a conference where it asks for the abstract first, probably we don't have the full article written yet. So can you give a few tips that will be really, really helpful for our students, I guess?
That's quite a tricky one. So you mean okay, so when we put for a conference, of course, sometimes we have to send an abstract in. But I don't know whether...
Praneeth, if I can just clarify a bit more, you have now completed the research, but you haven't written the earlier sections in the form of an article yet. But you know what you have done because you have anyway done the research. So it's a matter of putting everything into the abstract first, although you haven't written the rest of the part. If you can give a few tips.
Yeah, so then if that is the case, if you have not written your major part of your research paper at all, you just know what is your result and what are you trying to conclude from the results. Emphasis in your abstract more on the methodology you have used and the results you want to highlight. And of course, a minor modification in your abstract, I don't think is an issue even at the later stages. So when you send in, try to emphasize more on your methodologies you have used and the results you have obtained from your research. So that would be my tip.
Thank you, Praneeth. Yeah.
Yeah, Tassare. Yes. Go ahead, Tassare.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Chandran, I have a small question. During the mid presentation, you mentioned about overcoming your barriers. So one of them is finding suitable journals. So I assume that also includes finding relevant journals as well.
Yes, finding suitable, it can be relevant as well. That's what I meant.
So if we are doing some sort of a business research,
Yep.
like if we cannot find relevant information with relevant journals, so it's basically based on our own observations, like
Hmm.
purely our own observations during like on a field. So how should we proceed? Like, is the like the acceptance rate of the journal of ours being published by the reviewers is lower, since like they need more references and stuff to like compare and validate our research?
So that's what can you, I understood your question a bit, but can you just repeat some part of it, like especially the last part? So you have a research based on some field observations,
Yes.
and the problem is you are not finding a relevant journal, or
Yes.
is it that the journal's acceptance rate is very low?
Yeah, like we find journals like sometimes to study how to write, or sometimes to include information in those journals in ours as well as for references. Like my main concern is that if the references in our journal is lower, like it is harder to validate. Like it's like showing our own opinions on an observation. So like in order to like evade that mindset, how should we uh, do our research by evading that matter?
So you think that, okay, there are quite few references available for the work you're trying to do. Is that so the case?
Yeah, maybe only a little, maybe not so much.
Okay, so what I would do is like, if there are very few researchers available based for your work, start with, I would look at individual researchers, maybe like there is a latest published research, somewhat relevant to yours. So I'll start with that. I will start looking at his references. I'll read through his introduction, understand what is happening there, and I'll look through the references he has utilized. So it's like go from the latest to the oldest versions. So in the end, you will be able to get more references that somehow relates to your work. But in the end, it is also possible that you might not need to have so much of references if the study doesn't have that much. So usually you can just have, so I've seen journal papers where people only have used 10 references, 8 references. So you can always motivate saying that, you have not seen further researches that is based or like what is relevant to yours. So that's again, if the reviewers are disagreeing with this, they will obviously provide more information or provide some examples, like there are other researchers available like these, which in the end, again, you can utilize to enhance your paper. So it's like a give and take policy.
Understood, sir. Thank you, Dr. Chandran.
Dr. Chandran, I have a small question.
Yep.
Yeah, so sir, like in general, like when it comes to writing a conference article, like with some sort of experience, like maybe not that much of experience, like maybe a beginner or maybe an intermediate person who's starting to write an article, like how long do you think will it take for him or her to write something like that?
So it's usually, writing is a skill, I would say, but it depends on people to people. But I would recommend start with what you know, or at least what you have done already. So that makes that process quite faster. So it'll be like, if you know the methodologies, the results, and your conclusion, that are things that you can write very quickly because you know what you have done. So to put a time frame, it's quite difficult because it's different from, suppose if I'm writing a conference paper, I might take 15 to 20 days. But on the other hand, maybe Dr. Prasanna might take 5 days, 10 days. So it depends on various factors like your writing skills, how quickly you can frame sentences. But usually a conference papers is achievable within like 10 to 15 days if you have all the results and if all the results are available to you. So it shouldn't be much more longer than that.
With that question, Dr. Chandran, so can you give some tips for resources and tools that are available to kind of support researchers?
So researchers and tools, like if you are trying to prepare a manuscript, there is always like LaTeX. I don't know if you have heard about
Yes.
LaTeX.
Yeah.
So LaTeX, you recently have most of the templates inbuilt within them, or you can download it from the site and put it in LaTeX, and then writing and formatting becomes much easier. So that's one, meaning then for referencing and adding references to your articles, there are tools such as Mendeley, RefWorks, citation managers, which makes, the referencing part very easier. And I don't know what else. Maybe if you give me some specific questions.
Maybe check how checking grammatical errors and maybe.
Yeah, of course, there is Grammarly. If I'm not wrong, I have not used it myself, but there should be Grammarly, and there's another app called Spell Check, if I'm not wrong. So maybe these are websites that you can use it in your Word document itself. You can build, it's like an add-in function that you can have.
Got it.
Excuse me, sir.
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
Good evening. So I do have a doubt, sir. So in our degree program, we do a lot of assignments. So actually, it's like kind of practical. So for that, we do a lot of finding. So my question is can we write an article out of the assignments to a conference?
So it's an assignment on your coursework?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You can, if you feel that you have done something and you're getting a result which is valid, write a conference paper. There's nothing wrong in writing anything you feel. And then you can always contact your faculties and ask an opinion. So do you think this is a publishable material? And of course, you can find conferences or journals where you can publish what is in your paper. Because of course, you also have to look, maybe if I'm on the content of what you write. Sometimes an assignments can be very small. I don't know what assignments you have in your mind, but sometimes assignments can be very small. But there was an option that you can extend that part a bit more and then create a paper out of it. So there's nothing wrong in writing a paper from the practical work you have carried out.
So it's like that. It's not matter whether it's small or big, whether it have a good content.
Yes.
Then you're suggesting us to write.
Yes, go ahead. Meaning, don't hold back.
Sure.
Of course, that's what I said. Like, you can always, from my experience, at least for me, I have never got a paper accepted or like a paper accepted without any comments. I always get comment from the reviewers or from my supervisors when I did my PhD. So just take these feedbacks and try to incorporate your paper into your paper. It automatically becomes a better article.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Praneeth, one question from me also. Normally in Sri Lanka, we are starting the publishing with the abstract. First, we are publishing, abstracting some conference, some local conferences. Thereafter, do we have any opportunity to publish the same work in an article? And when we are publishing the same work in an article, do we need to add some improvements, or can we publish the same content?
So Usually, if you conference proceedings, if you publish in a conference proceedings a particular article, you cannot use the same article convert it into a journal, a different journal. But so that means in that case, you have to enhance the current work slightly. At least you have to have 10% changes in your present article. 10 to 15% changes is recommended. But if for example, like there are conferences which have their own journal proceedings or which have their own journal books published, in that case, you can send it to the same to that particular journal, then you might get accepted directly without any changes. So it depends on which journal publication you have in your mind. So usually, from my experience, what I've seen is that once you have published in a conference proceedings, it's quite difficult to publish the same material in another article, in another journal. So you need to make some changes or enhance it further.
Thank you, Dr. Chandran.
Dr. Chandran, so when let's say when a student or when you're going to submit for a conference, so what kind of suggestions that you can give if someone is kind of writing alone his or her work? So any kind of suggestions or opinions that you can give us?
So if you're writing a
alone.
conference on your own, paper on your own.
Yeah.
Meaning
any kind of guidance, kind of.
So writing on your own is quite challenging, meaning I would put my hands up to that person who is writing on their own. So it's very, meaning you can write a paper on your own, but of course the paper becomes a bit more better, or you can say the quality enhances if you have a supervising faculty there with you. Meaning it's up to the student. If he feels that the work is complete and he's confident of the work, you can write your own paper. There is nothing wrong. But of course, sometimes it is quite challenging, I would say.
Yes, of course. So I guess, a student, do you have any other question to ask from Dr. Chandran? Okay, so if not, so many thanks again, Dr. Chandran. So I invite Ms. Chetana to thanking you for joining with us today to give this webinar. Chetana, it's over to you, Chetana. Thank you.
First of all, a special thank goes to our key speaker, Dr. Praneeth Chandran, for accepting our invitation and being here with us today. And thank you once again for delivering a fruitful session for us. Then we are thanking for all the staff members of our faculty for joining this session by spending their valuable time. And we are thanking for all the students for joining with us today. Once again, I would like to thank each one of you for being here. Thank you so much. May you be blessed with happy and joy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chandran. Thank you.
With that, we can conclude this webinar for today. We will continue to have a few more webinars. So we welcome all your presence. Thank you again, Praneeth. Have a very nice evening.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. And it was a great pleasure to meet all of you here.
Thank you. So with that, we are concluding the session.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.